Hello. We'll go ahead and get started here. Oliver will be joining us for practice today too. If you see a tail coming back and forth, that's what's happening. So the idea for today's practice is kind of exploring touch and how the sense of push and pull can support our practice and support cultivating different experiences in our practice. And one of the ways that we can kind of take that push and pull out of just like that physical asana and into our day-to-day lives, like are there moments where we could really use that push in towards ourselves or that push out or pull out of our shells? And how do these physical explorations really support us in also cultivating these non-physical explorations or more social explorations? So we'll go ahead and get started. And I think Oliver has chosen how I'm starting here in a comfortable seat. So allow yourself to come into that comfortable seat, not necessarily pushing or pulling yourself quite yet into this expectation of what a seat should look like, but really allowing your body to hold itself in its natural way. You can allow the hands to rest in the lap. Maybe you start to let the eyes soften or close. And then we'll just start to take note, noticing what's going on in the body this morning, or whatever time of day it is. Maybe that's noticing thoughts, feelings, or sensations. Places you're sensing tension. Those places you're sensing ease. Trying here not to put any judgment or value on what's coming up, but really simply allowing what's coming up to be. From this place of being, we'll start to invite in the breath. Thinking about breathing in through the nose, filling into the chest, the ribs, the belly, and allowing that breath to start to move your body. And then as you exhale, this settling into this slightly shifted shape from the belly, the ribs, the chest. So on those full inhales, thinking about the breath coming into you, pushing out on the rib cage and the chest and the belly, allowing movement to come into your physical form. And then as you exhale, this releasing out. Continue with this 3-part breath, our Dirga breath. Allowing the breath to transform that starting position into your own personal alignment for this moment, for this practice. And as you start to get comfortable with where you've landed, noticing maybe there's less and less movement with those inhales, maybe you start to invite in a particular intention for your practice today. So if you're feeling connected to that intention that I brought forth at the beginning of exploring push and pull, Maybe that becomes your intention. Maybe there's something completely different, something your own in this moment that feels like it wants to be cultivated. Once you've landed on a particular intention, we'll start to use the breath to move and shift that intention, to push and pull at that intention. Taking that full breath in, breathing that intention in by speaking it silently to yourself on the inhale. And then as you breathe out, this letting go and allowing for transformation. So that inhale invites movement in that intention, that taking into your physical form, noticing how it lands. And that breath out is a way to let go, to release the pieces that maybe don't quite fit or don't quite align with what you need this morning. Take a couple more rounds of breath with intention. And then when you feel satisfied here, start to let the eyes open back up to bring that awareness back out to the space around you. Maybe peeking at the edges of your ceiling and any animals that may have appeared. Again, just orienting to what is. Noticing if you maybe need to shift your seat, coming into a slightly different seat, or where you're at feels good. Then wherever you're at, we'll start to bring the hands towards the knees, and on a big breath in, think about pressing the chest forward, opening through that chest, squeezing the shoulder blades, peeking up towards the ceiling. This seated cow pose, sorry. And then as you exhale, start to round the shoulders forward, roll through the spine, tuck the chin, our seated cat pose. We'll move through a couple rounds of breath here, using that breath to set the tempo, inhaling to open up through that front of the body. And this exhale, pulling in through the belly button to round through the spine. Take this at your own pace. Again, allowing that action of the breath to really push the shape or guide the shape. Almost like that breath coming in is pressing you all forward. And that breath out is a gentle pull back. Two to three more rounds here. On this next exhale, allowing the spine to come back through that neutral space. And on that next inhale, we'll sweep the arms up and overhead, reaching towards the ceiling. And exhaling to drop over towards the right. The right hand lands down, bending over towards that right side. That breath in, think about pushing the hands up towards the ceiling. And exhale, letting gravity bring you over towards the left side. Keeping an active grounding through the hips here. We'll take that a couple more times, inhaling to come through center. And exhaling over towards the right, thinking about that push in the hands. Inhale through center. Push towards the ceiling and exhale towards the left. A few more with your own breath. This time, as you inhale and come through center, push the arms towards the sides of your space, almost like you're pushing on walls. And then as you exhale, begin to rotate towards the right and soften the hands down. That front hand comes towards the knee, the back hand sits behind you. Inhale to find this push, almost like you're opening curtains towards the center. And exhale to find the twist, lower the hands down. My cat may attack me here. I'm gonna go put him away. Continue to find this twisting through, pushing open those curtains on the inhale. And on the exhale, softly softening towards one side. Take one more round on each side. On an exhale, we'll come back through center. We'll start to bring the legs out in front of us, keeping a generous bend through the knees. And start to let yourself drape over the legs. Just taking a couple moments to let those movements, those Pratapana movements, integrate into your system. If you've practiced with me before, you know that these moments of space in between after we take an extended held shape or movement are these invitations to notice how things have landed, to integrate, to slow our pace. We'll take about 5 more breaths here in this gentle forward fold. Really breathing into that back body. Again, this innate push of the breath in from inside, creating expansion in that physical form. I like to think about that breath pushing open different parts of myself, like the back body or the side bodies. When you feel complete here, start to gently lift the head up. Release any grasp of the hands. You can bring the hands towards the earth to support this sitting up. And then we'll start to shift forward so we can come onto a seat on our shins. So the knees can be about hip width distance apart here. The butt resting on the heels. Check that the tops of the feet are flat towards the mat. And then we're going to let the hands hang to the side here. And on a breath in, we're going to pull the elbows up. And breath out, push the hands down. Noticing how this impacts the shoulders. Inhale, pull the elbows up. And then push the hands down. We'll do this about 3 more times. Inhale. And exhale. Last time here, inhale, pull the elbows up, pause for a moment. We're going to release the left hand out so that the palm faces forward. And we're going to start to bring that right hand behind us so that it's snuggled into that low back space. I'll flip around so you can see this. Finding a gentle resting spot for that arm. And then we're going to take that left arm and bring it across the body towards the right shoulder and start to just give yourself a little bit of a squeeze, pushing into the soft tissue here. Maybe running the fingers along that shoulder blade if you can feel like the top of that shoulder blade. Exploring a little bit of self-touch here, a little bit of what it means to push a part of ourselves into ourselves through self-massage. Knowing that if this feels really good and is like what you need, you can continue here. Or if this is feeling complete, you can begin to release that right arm back down. Take a big breath in. Think about the crown of the head pushing towards the ceiling for a moment. Reach that left arm towards the ceiling. Find length. And then as you exhale, let that left hand come towards the right side of the head and gently let that ear come towards the shoulder. There can be a gentle, gentle pull here with that hand, just being mindful of how that right shoulder is feeling in this shape, how the neck is feeling. We'll take a couple rounds of breath here, noticing where you feel that internal push of the breath in this shape, how you're experiencing this gentle pull of the top hand. And what those actions and sensations are bringing up within that physical, emotional, and thinking body. One more big breath in. Big breath out to start to release that top arm or release that bottom arm, wiggle it out. And we'll take a big breath in to reach both arms across the body. And exhale, start to round through the spine. Give yourself a hug. The chin tucks in towards this little nook that we've created with the bent elbows. You may even feel this pulling of the hands on the shoulder blades here as you round through the spine. And take a couple moments to breathe here. Again, having that inquiry of where do I feel the breath pushing? How does this slight pulling of the hands along the tops of the arms or the shoulders impact those other internal movements? As we start to come out of this shape, we'll start to lift the head gently, release the arms, and we'll take a moment to let that settle. Maybe that's a little wiggle or woggle coming off of the legs for a moment and bringing them up to give them a little bit of air, bring back a little bit of blood flow. Maybe rolling through the ankles. And then we'll start to rock back onto the mat, bringing the sits bones to the heels. If for any reason this is feeling like Sitting too long on the heels, blocks or a bolster coming under the bum here can bring that seat up slightly so that there's less pressure on those lower legs and feet. And then we're going to take that shrugging motion again on that breath in. Think about pulling the elbows up towards the ceiling. And then exhale, active push through the heels of the hand down towards the mat. Breath in to pull the elbows up. Breath out to push down. 2 more times here. Inhale. And exhale, just moving to your edge of your range of motion. So it doesn't have to be a big shrug. The next breath in, that next bend through the elbows, we'll pause here and start to push the right arm out towards the side as we rotate that left arm behind us. Big breath in. And then as you exhale, you can bring that right arm across the body and start to find those little pushes, those little massages with the fingertips on the top of that shoulder blade space and the soft tissue here. Exploring what feels good. Knowing you can vary the pressure of the push. It might just be a soft touch. Or it could be really like a deep massage, just depending on what feels good for your body, for you on this side. And then maybe on this next breath in, start to think about releasing that right arm towards the ceiling, pushing the crown of the head towards the ceiling, pushing that hand towards the ceiling. And then as you exhale, let that right hand land on the left side of the head, drop the right ear towards the right shoulder. Maybe you explore a very, very gentle pull. And we'll pause and breathe here, knowing that if that left shoulder is feeling like it's getting too much, you can bring it out any amount, or you can even release it out towards the side. Lots of option here. And noticing where that breath is going. Where do you feel that internal push? Sometimes I think we connect to the sense of pushing or pulling as a violent action or an intense action. But also recognizing in these moments of exploring them through our physical asana that there are times where they're necessary to create some motivation or a particular movement. And they don't have to be these big, grand gestures or movements. They can be really soft and subtle. One more big breath in. On that breath out, release that pull, release the arms, wiggle it out. Take a big breath in to reach the arms from side to side. And then exhale, see if you can think about which hand was on top before, crossing that hand under this time, rounding through the spine, tucking the chin. Couple breath cycles here. Again, maybe you can tap into that sense of pulling of the hands down the shoulders, this push of the back body towards the back of your space. Maybe there's a little push of the chin up and in. How these movements can really be strengthening places to create more support within your experience. Within the next inhale or two, we'll start to lift the head, unwind. And this time we'll walk all the way forward, releasing the feet, bringing the knees wide, the toes to touch, and sinking the hips back as you melt the chest forward. Forehead can come towards the mat here. If this is feeling like, oh, my hips and knees have been bent for too long, another option is to flatten all the way onto the belly. You can keep those hands reaching up and overhead, or you can stack the palms underneath the forehead. Using this moment to explore this integration shape. This moment to let all of that land. About 3 more breaths here. And as you're ready, if you're on the belly, starting to bring the hands underneath the shoulders, press into a seat. From that child's pose, you'll start to lift the hips, coming into an all fours, and finding your way to that seat with the feet in front of us here. We'll bring the hands slightly behind us, so there's a slight lean back here. And we'll start to windshield wiper the legs from side to side. My hips like to crawl forward here, so maybe you feel the arms getting further from the shoulders, or I guess the hands further from the shoulders. Know that you can lift those hips up and bring them back. If you also have those walking hips. And we'll gently bring this to a pause, start to sit onto our sit bones. Oh, words. And we're going to start to bring our legs over towards the right, keeping a nice bend in the knees, about a 90-degree bend here. And we're going to start with that front leg, again, exploring push with our hands. I like to think of myself as a little cat here. Although I lost my little cat assistant, he was not liking yoga this morning. But finding that place where the bone is and then walking the fingers beneath the bone or to the edge of the bone, finding that soft tissue, finding a way that pushing into that soft tissue feels good. Again, you have autonomy of how much you push and where you push. And part of making those choices around those differences can really be about listening to how your body's responding to it. So I'm noticing like my calf is really responding with this almost like it's getting gushy with like the harder pushes. So I'm exploring those harder pushes because it feels good to have that release. Maybe that feels really painful and not like something that you want. So you're just playing around with little taps of sensation. Maintaining breath here. As you're ready, we'll start to twist slightly towards that back leg. I have to take a little bit of a support with one of my hands here, so the push on the back leg becomes a little less two-handed. Then we'll explore massaging that outer edge of the back foot. So I'll turn here so you can kind of see. Again, noticing if this leg, the side of the leg needs something different, because it is a different side compared to the other leg. And as you explore this little bit of pressure or movement, staying anchored in that breath. When you feel satisfied with that leg, we'll bring the hands to frame the hips slightly. We'll bring the knees back through center and over towards that other side. We'll again start with that front leg. You may feel some stretch through that back leg. You can kind of adjust as you need. And play around with what does the front or the inner side of this calf need. The same as what the outer side of the calf needed. Is it a different level of push or contact? Finding that exploration. It also brings me to like this idea or thought that like push doesn't necessarily have to be like this forceful pushing, but anytime that we make contact with something that we identify as outside of ourselves or different from ourselves, so like anytime we make contact, there is this subtle pushing and maybe sometimes some not so subtle pushing that facilitates that contact. Without, we wouldn't have contact. If there's no push, there's space. I'm kind of thinking about that as a way to widen our experience of push and soften our experience of push. Gently switch to the other leg, so finding that turn in the body to get towards the outer edge of that other leg. I'm going to bring this hand behind me as a support so I can have a little bit of a lean back. Staying with that breath. And feel satisfied, releasing that hand to also frame the legs, bring those legs back through center. We'll actually start to work our way onto our back. So coming onto the forearms, maybe the hips shift down on the mat slightly, lowering all the way onto the back body. Maybe taking a moment to tuck those shoulder blades underneath the rib cage. To gently lift the head and pull it slightly towards the top of the mat to find that space between each vertebrae, or at least encourage a little bit of space between each vertebrae. And an option here to keep the feet planted, the knees pointed towards the ceiling, or maybe you walk the feet slightly out and allow the knees to come in and touch. Taking a moment here in an integration shape just to notice how the self-massage, this exploration of pushing on the calves has landed. Also noticing that push and pull of the breath here and how it's interacting with the body from the inside out. Noticing how that push from inside with the inhale interacts with our environment, like the ground or your clothes or the air. Where do you sense that internal push becoming maybe an external push or pull? One or two more rounds of breath here. The eyes had kind of softened in this shape. Start to allow them to open back up or take in a little bit more light. Walking the feet back in line with the glutes. We'll start to float the shins towards the ceiling. So again, coming to this little 90 degree bend in the knees, 90 degree bend in the hips. And we'll start to slide our hands towards the outside edge of the knees, or even just below the knees at the thighs if it's feeling unsafe to press against the actual joint. And then we're going to think about pressing the knees out while we contain or hold or push in. So there's like this isometric situation happening here where there's this press out with the knees, this holding or gentle press in with the hands, but everything's really staying where it's at. There's just this active, almost unseeable push happening inside. And we'll take a breath in, breath out, breath in. This time, breath out, let that soften, maybe the knees bend, the arms release so that they rest back down on the mat. We'll take 2 breaths here. After those 2 breaths, allowing the shins to come back to be parallel with the ceiling, finding that press in and out for 2 breath cycles here. Maybe there's an audible sigh out. On that next exhale, let that all soften. Take a couple of breaths in this softening place. Last time here, bringing those hands to the outer edges of the thighs, bringing the knees and pushing out into the hands. Hands press into the sides of the legs or the knees. Breath in and out. In and out. Big breath in. This time on the out, keep the legs as they are, but release that little bit of push. We're going to take our hands into fists, bring the inner sides of the fists together, and then bring those between the legs. And this time we're going to push in with the knees towards the fists. Again, keeping those hands just slightly underneath the actual joint. We'll take a breath in and a breath out with this push in. One more, big breath in. Big breath out. On an exhale, release that all down. Maybe you find a little wiggle from side to side in the legs. Letting that all go. The hips can start to peel slightly up off the mat, inviting a little bit of a twist coming in at that pelvis. And we'll start to shift to our final little exploration of shapes here. Maybe before you move on, you feel like, oh, I like this twist and I want to find it a little bit more freed. You can bring the feet towards the mat, lift the hips into a gentle bridge and find that little rock in the hips with them lifted off the mat. The hands kind of at this low V to support the shape. And wherever you are with that little rocking of the hips from side to side, bring them in center, let them rest down. And take a round of breath or two just to settle into where that stillness has landed us. Then we'll start to float the knees or the feet up once more. This time we're going to cross the legs, bringing that left leg towards the outer edge of the right. You may notice that like you're coming to like a figure 4 to start. I like to have my hands out towards the sides at a place where it feels like it really supports a solid base. And then we're going to think about pushing that left foot, that left shin, or I guess it's the side of the shin, into the side of the thigh. So it's almost like this squeezing in of the inner thighs. And that right leg is pushing out on that low shin. So we're going to take a breath or two here, just squeezing everything in, thinking about this knee coming towards center. And then exhale, soften. We'll let the legs dip over towards the left side of the mat. You can unwind the legs here if that feels better. Coming into a supine twist. Take a moment to reach both hands up and overhead. Push the hands towards the ceiling for a moment. Take your gaze over towards that right hand and open up the hand as your gaze stays on that right hand, finding this full twist through the spine, legs over to one side, gaze over towards the other. And then maybe we explore this really soft, gentle push or contact. The left hand reaches over towards the right rib cage, taking a big breath in. The breath presses against the hand. And then as you exhale, a slight pulling of that left hand along the hip, along the knee. Very gentle here, almost just a touch or a glide. And we'll take a couple breaths on this side. Starting to gently unwind here, allow the gaze to come back through center. Release that hand from the knee if it was there. Start to bring the knees back through center, the hips ground down. Maybe they gently walk towards the front of your space, and we'll take that to the other side, taking the right side of the shin, side of the ankle towards that left outer thigh, right below the knee. And then we're thinking about pressing this shin into the thigh, taking a breath or two here, feeling that squeeze. And then soften that squeeze, exhale, bring that all over towards the right. Option to stay like this as your posture, or you can unwind that top leg and tuck it under the bottom leg. Reach both arms up towards the ceiling. This time, bring the gaze towards that left hand. And as you exhale, push the arms out towards the side. The gaze follows that left hand. You might pause here, or you might bring in that little push-pull, touch, glide, bringing that right hand over towards the left rib cage. Taking a breath in, feeling the rib cage push up towards the hand. And then as you exhale, that gentle pull or glide of the right hand towards the hip, all the way towards the knee. If the feet are crossed here, your hand will get kind of like caught on the foot. That's okay. If you unwinded the legs, you can rest the hand on the knee. We'll take a couple moments to breathe here. And maybe coming to this inquiry of how push and pull have different levels of intensity and different levels of impact based on that intensity. How push and pull are how we make contact with ourselves, with our environment, with others, as well as how push and pull can shape us and change us in ways that encourage movement and shift and depth. Knowing that this isn't just true for our physical practice, but also this metaphorical, philosophical, lived life practice of yoga. When you start to feel yourself being ready to come out of this shape, release that right hand if it was still resting on the body. Gently bring the gaze back through center. We'll start to bring those knees back through center. Taking a moment maybe to bring the hands towards the shins, pulling the nose up towards the knees, taking a really big breath in this small little ball shape. Feeling that push out of the breath. And then as you exhale, this softening and releasing all of that hold, allowing the legs to come down, the arms to come down, the shoulders and the head to come down. Extending through the legs, allowing the toes to knock out towards the sides, the hands to rest at the sides of the body, or maybe even on the body. Letting the eyes soften and close. Inviting in this sense of heaviness in the head. A softening of the eyebrows. A release of the jaw. Let the shoulders get heavy and maybe they slide just gently underneath the rib cage. Letting the arms and hands get heavy. The sense of weight or contact with the mat traveling into the torso, into the hips, all the way down to the legs, to the feet, to the toes. Give yourself permission to rest here, to make contact with the mat, to experience this almost passive push or connection with the ground. To let our entire practice integrate. Almost like this vision of like a glitter jar or a snow globe, and letting all of those little pieces, those thoughts, those feelings, those sensations that we stirred up in this practice to resettle, to reconnect. Knowing that I will wake you when it's time. Let the first movement that comes back into your body be that full breath in, that full breath out. Allow that little wave of the breath to travel to those furthest extremities, the fingers and the toes, inviting them to start to wiggle. Maybe there's a little push-pull coming into the fingers and the toes. Letting that movement grow into the ankles and the wrists, finding movement there. Into the elbows and the knees. Into the hips and the shoulders. Eventually building enough movement to where it feels okay to rock to one comfortable side. Coming into this first shape that we ever really make in life. And taking a moment here for gratitude. A thanking of yourself for coming to your practice. For exploring today. And then as you're ready, we'll start to push our way up into that comfortable seat. The eyes can stay soft or closed. Bringing the hands to rest at the heart space. We'll end today's practice with a communal breath, exhaling the air from our lungs. Taking a breath in through the nose or the mouth. And an audible sigh out together. The light and love in me and the push and pull in me. See the light and love and the push and pull in you. And together we become stronger and brighter. And together we bow forward. Thank you so much for practicing with me. I hope you enjoyed that practice and that exploration of push and pull. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, Yoga Brain. Thanks for joining.